Hey, Cross Park. Glad you could join me this week for this leadership update. It's August. Lots of you, like us, are fitting in a last minute trip or two because fall's coming. We all know the back to school sales are happening. You've got emails from schools and teachers. You're getting your school supplies. Even if you don't have kids in school right now, you know fall is coming. We all know it because we feel the heat. The dog days of summer, we're looking forward to relief. And at Cross Park, when we think about summer and fall particularly, we think about a change in schedule. Our summer tends to be lighter in terms of programming because people are on vacation, they're out of town, school's out, etc., etc. We actually think it's, in one way, there's a restfulness to summer that's good that we want to encourage. At the same time as the fall comes, we shift back into a different mode at church. And so we have our fall stuff coming up. And so I wanted to give you a quick orientation. August 27th, the last Sunday of August, as we're wrapping up our current sermon series and wrapping up our summer schedule, we will have what we're calling our fall preview brunch. So directly after the service, we'll have some snacks for you, a light brunch. You can grab a snack, come back to your seat in the worship area, and we're going to give you a little preview about what's coming in the fall, Sunday morning stuff, ministry opportunities during the week, etc., to help you get a sense of what we're doing as a church this fall and how you can plug in. So that's going to be August 27th, right after church. And then September 3rd will be the beginning of our fall schedule. We'll move back to a 9:30 start for Sunday school and a 10:30 start for worship. So again, we're in a quarterly system. September, October, November is our fall quarter. And so we'll be in fall mode. Sunday school for all ages at 9:30, worship at 10:30. So look forward to having you join us for that. This Sunday, we have Nick DeVusser, one of our interns, preaching for us again this summer. I love giving summer slots to interns, and Nick does a great job. So we're going to be in Psalm 133. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about Psalm 133 on this video because I don't want to steal any of Nick's thunder, but I am briefly going to read for you the poem that I wrote to get you thinking about it. Psalm 133 as a poem. Look how lovely unity can be. Brothers, sisters, live in harmony, suffusing our lives with fragrant grace, calming each heart and stroking each face. It's from above, refreshing our hearts, a blessing from God that He imparts. So join us at 9:30 this Sunday in our worship service, and we'll hear from Nick DeVusser from Psalm 133. But I actually want to talk briefly about a poem I read recently. Ann Porter is a religious poet, Catholic background, and I've been reading her poetry recently because it was gifted to me. And I was quickly struck by her poem called After Psalm 137. I'm not going to give you the whole story and the whole background on Psalm 137. You can go read it. But Psalm 137 is a lament psalm. It's an imprecatory psalm. It is lamenting deeply what exile feels like. We've been taken far from home. We've hung up our harps. We can't sing. We're in such deep distress about what has happened to our people and our country, and they're asking for God to bring justice. And what's interesting is Porter's poem that I'm about to read to you reflects on what it would be like for people after they'd been in exile for a while. So this poem is called After Psalm 137. We're still in Babylon, but we do not weep. Why should we weep? We have forgotten how to weep. We've sold our harps and bought ourselves machines that do our singing for us. And who remembers now the songs we sang in Zion? We have got used to exile. We hardly notice our captivity. For some of us, there are such comforts here, such luxuries, even a guard to keep the beggars from annoying us. Jerusalem, we have forgotten you. So again, the biblical Psalm 137 has the people lamenting from Babylon in exile. They've hung up their harps. And here, they're not weeping. They've stopped weeping. They've forgotten how to weep because they don't remember. They don't remember what they're made for. They don't remember what they're missing. They've gotten used to exile. That's sort of the punchline of the poem. As awful as exile is, what if we get used to it? What if we forget that we're in exile, that we, in the wrong way, adjust our expectations to a life of exile and assume that this is as good as it gets, that this is what we're made for. The punchline at the end is, Jerusalem, we have forgotten you. So the Old Testament people in exile are longing to go back to Jerusalem. They're missing it. They don't want to forget the songs of Zion that they used to sing when they went up to the temple, when they went up for worship. And yet here there's a problem. Their captivity is comfortable. So it's a fascinating idea. It really struck me when I first read it. For some of us, she says, there are such comforts here, such luxuries. Captivity, exile isn't always, in all ways, uncomfortable. And so sometimes we get used to it. You know, we've been talking in this sermon series about how we're in exile. We're always in the valley. We're always in exile. We're always needing to go up to God and ascend to him, to worship him, to reconnect with him. And yet we live in a world that in every way tells us now is what matters. You need to make yourself as comfortable as possible. You need to settle in here and make the most of everything. And this plays all sorts of games with our hearts. We talked a few weeks ago about contentment and how hard it is to be content. That we want to be like that weaned child who delights in the Father's love and not just what the Father gives us. We want to love God more than we love his circumstances that he might provide for us. And yet the person who has gotten used to exile, as the speaker in this poem, we've lost something. We miss, there's a holy dissatisfaction that we're missing out on. She says there's even a guard to keep the beggars from annoying us. Right? We're consumers of happy enough circumstances. And the whole point, one of the points of the sermon series, is that because we're always in exile, it's supposed to make us long for God, to long for a knowledge, an experience, a reality of God that we aren't achieving, that we aren't feeling, that we aren't knowing on a regular basis. We miss it because of our sin, because of our circumstances, because of all the things. But fundamentally, it's a relational problem that we're meant to know God and want him and not settle for something less than God himself. And yet in exile, those who have gotten comfortable in this poem have adjusted. They've wrongly lowered their expectations. They've shifted into a mode where they think, well, I guess this is home. This is as good as it gets. I need to adjust and make my circumstances as comfortable and fun as possible. It may sound like contentment, right? I need to make the best of this. But it isn't necessarily. Contentment, as all of us know, is not so much about our circumstances, but about our heart. It's about how we relate to God and to the people around us. It's about our expectations. And so the person who's gotten used to exile, they may think, well, I guess I just need to be content. But in fact, they're missing the fact that they're made for something else. They're missing the fact that they're in exile. And there are aspects of exile that we're not supposed to be content with. We're not supposed to be content with sin. We're not supposed to be content with a merely here and now thinking, a short-term horizon, a consumer instinct to get all I can get. We're supposed to be discontent with those kinds of things. And when we're in exile, when we know we're in exile, it does cause us to ask the right kinds of contentment questions. Because again, we say, there's an experience of God that I'm made for, that I'm missing. I know that I'm missing it, and I want it. I want it to be part of my life. I want it to be something that's true of me, and I cannot simply make it come true. I need to wait on God. He has to do it in his way and in his time. Some of that is personal. He's got to meet me personally. Some of it's a sort of historical issue. He's going to have to come back and remove injustice and deal with sin and fix the brokenness, right? So you've got both those things going on, the personal waiting, the historical, we're waiting for the next thing that Jesus is going to do. But all of that is connected to exile and contentment. Exile says, There's more coming. I'm disconnected from God in a certain way, and thus I need a certain kind of contentment. I need a contentment that says I can wait on what God will do. It's not here yet. I get some of it now and more of it later. And so rather than simply trying to manipulate or adjust or coerce my circumstances to make me as happy as possible, I'm going to look for God, look for what he's doing, look for how he wants to meet me personally, spiritually, despite circumstances. And I'm not going to forget that I'm in exile, because that heart of exile makes me long more for him. So something to think about this week as we head into the final stretch of our sermon series, the last 3 sermons that we'll be preaching in this playlist for the Journey Home sermon series. We hope that you'll join us each Sunday. We're meeting at 9:30 for the rest of August, and then we'll shift to our fall schedule in September. But Nick DeVusser is preaching for us. Read Psalm 133, and we'll see you Sunday morning at 9:30. Thanks, Crosspark.